Tonight is a formal council meeting, even though it's been designed as a public information and question session. So I just want to remind everyone that the formal procedural bylaw and rules of procedure will be applied tonight. So in accordance with that, I would ask that everybody maintain a reasonable sense of decorum. So the first item on the agenda is disclosure of pecuniary interest. So if any member of council does have a pecuniary interest, I would ask to declare that now. So I don't see any, so we can move on. So the format for tonight, we're going to have a brief presentation from the CAO just to kind of quickly run through a timeline with respect to the OPP costing process. Both what's leading up to today and what will follow after tonight's meeting. After that, members of the public will have an opportunity to ask questions. If you do have a question, I would ask that you line up behind the microphone over here to my right. Line up in single file if you can, stay as close to the wall as possible. Once it is your turn at the microphone, I would ask that before you get to your question, if you could just state your name and your address for the record. Again, because this is a public meeting, notes of all comments and questions will be recorded in order to be maintained as part of the public record. If you are reading from a prepared statement, I would ask that you provide a copy of that statement to the town clerk, again, so that can be filed and maintained as part of the public record. So with that, I will invite our CAO, Denise Morrissey, to the podium to provide a brief overview of the process.
So we're supposed to be up there. There it is. So thank you. This is a bit dry, but I'm just going to provide you with the context of when this process started. So formally in November of 2017, when a notice of motion was presented by council. I will note that prior to that formal notice of motion, there were two reviews of this similar motion before that one. So on the 4th of December, council formally approved that they would look at requesting a costing for contract services from the OPP for the town of Shelburne. It was in July of this 2018 that we had actually scheduled the presentation to be held. Council reconsidered the timing of that presentation when obviously there was an election in 2018, and the decision was made to request that to be done in January of 2019. So that presentation was completed on the 28th of January of this year, and on on the 14th of January, on the 28th, council approved that we would hire a consultant to help us with the evaluation, which is a pretty common approach with many municipalities that have gone through this. And that consultant was hired on the 5th of March and is working currently on the review. And they'll be looking at operations and capital costs associated with both forces. Additionally, on the 25th of March, most recently, the OPP was here to present to council the billing model. And I'll just note that the billing model is different than the 3-year transition process. And that is based on how the OPP bills once you're on a full contract, whether it's a Section 10 or a 5.1. We also, through the process on the 25th of March, initiated an online survey. And there's basic questions with respect to having the community input on what they value in terms of policing services, and also providing council with some input given the estimated capital costs for whether a new building or whether it would be a renovated building, to help council hear what the community feels in terms of priorities as it relates to other capital projects that might need to be discontinued or reconsidered in terms of priorities. On April the 3rd, which is tonight, we are here to hear from the community and their questions directly to the OPP. Following this, on the 13th of May, there'll be another similar meeting, and this time the Shelburne Police Services will be presenting their 2018 annual report and again addressing questions from the community. On June the 3rd, our consultant will bring their final report to be presented to council, and based on that, staff will then prepare a report and a recommendation to council for the 24th of this year, soon in June, and this will ensure that we meet the 6-month deadline of the OPP to provide them a formal response by July the 15th. This information will be on our website, as well as we'll post it on our Facebook through the link, so thank you very much.
Thanks, Denise. So before we get into the question and answer portion, I'd just like to take a quick second to introduce the panel. We have 4 representatives from the Ontario Provincial Police with us tonight to answer the questions that you may have. Starting on my left, we have Staff Sergeant Cadu, Linda Davis, Ken Key, and Staff Sergeant Randall. So with that, don't be shy. If you have a question, please get up to the mic. And what's that? So again, I would just ask you to state your name and your address for the record.
My name is Len Mikulich. I live at 105 Carolyn Street, Shelburne, postal code L 9B3C2. Mr. Mayor and the delegation at the head table, I wish to advise you that I am the past chair of the Shelburne Police Services Board, and during my tenure as board chair, I can tell you that our police service always had excellent crime clearance rates. In fact, they were the highest, some of the highest, if you will, in Ontario. My question is, can you tell us how your crime clearance rates have been at the Dufferin Detachment over the past 5 years?
Thanks for your question. I cannot give you details directly on that. We can certainly get back to you and report back to council and give you those figures.
So the answer is you don't have it tonight, but you will provide it to the council and be made available to the public, correct?
Most certainly.
All right, thank you.
Sorry, most certainly. I don't think mine was on.
Just a comment, many of our officers have policed the town of Shelburne for many years. For example, Chief Moore for 32 years, Sergeant Curry 32 years, Sergeant Bennett 17, Constable Moran 17, Constable Whitber 14 years, and so on. Because our officers know the community and have been able to build relationships with citizens and community groups, these relationships and knowledge of our town obviously assist in many ways, including solving crime and keeping crime rates down. Under the OPP, officers that come in and go from one detachment to another, which make community policing very difficult. Can you please comment on that situation?
Well, I can give you at least the overall summary is the fact that we have officers that are stationed in local detachments that are invested in communities, that are a part of our communities. So this notion that we are not a service that caters to communities that we serve is in my opinion, not accurate. We have officers that live in these communities and they're very much a part of these communities. So for the situation where Shelburne decides to proceed with our service, those officers who come in, whether it's the officers from Shelburne who decide to apply and stay, they're more than welcome to stay here and they would be a part of this community. And we would not encourage them to leave in any way. They would be a part of this community. So.
Well, thank you. My last comment I'd like to make
Just one more rule, just so that everybody has an equal chance. I think we'll try to limit every question to one, and if you do have an additional question, I would just ask that you get back in line again, so that everybody has an opportunity to ask.
I just have a question about the Caledon scenario, and I can be sitting down and I'll be out of your way.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. During the Caledon crisis, the OPP drew staffing from around this province to support operations there. This resulted in minimal staff and detachments for extended periods of time. This would have a negative impact on community-based policing initiatives. My last question, Mr. Mayor, to the delegates. How does the OPP plan to mitigate that issue?
Just a point of clarification, sir. The Caledon crisis, I'm not entirely sure what you're referring to.
Well, essentially, sir, as I understand it, you drew on a lot of the detachment members of your staff, and you drew them there, and that detachment's unattended as well, with a lower number of staff. So my question is, how do you mitigate that kind of scenario? Should it happen, and you need our people, the OPP people in this supposedly stationed here?
Right, so I believe you're referring to Caledonia? Sorry.
Caledonia, I'm
Okay.
sorry, I apologize. if I'm-
Okay, no, that's fine, I just wanted to make clear on that.
Yes.
So, yes, we're a provincial service, and yes, we do have a provincial mandate. There are times, possibly, where there would be bodies that we would be drawn out to those to address those major events. In fact, when you consider the billing model, and as we bill our municipalities who are under that billing model, there's actually a deduction to municipalities in terms of costs for provincial services that are utilized. Yes, those times do occur. Specifically how and when, obviously we can't say. But it's never a situation where we're leaving our detachments unattended. And in fact, our service delivery model is such that it allows us flexibility. So where the need is, we have the flexibility to move officers around to those areas that require that service. Does that answer your question?
I just needed your answer, and if that's your answer, thank you.
Okay.
Can I have a copy of that written statement?
Absolutely, I'm looking for the clerk. I want
Take
to-
it back here, I can collect them up here.
My name is Al Whitberg. I live at 418 Pineview Gardens. I've had a business in the town for 40 years. Al, mine be 3828, sorry. I've been doing a little bit of searching, and 2 weeks ago, I don't know if it was one of you officers up there or down here, said that you had 6 officers on duty every night to cover the county. 2 days later, when I checked, there was 3 for the whole county of the OPP office. Is that normal? Are we going to be left unattended if someone has to go to another accident or fire or whatever?
I'm going to refer you to Staff Sergeant Brand. She's the local Duffer detachment defender.
Like,
Currently at our detachment, the platoons are staffed with 4 constables and 1 sergeant for the county. There are occasions, yes, when there's only 3 officers in the county because we have officers vacation time, training time, and other things come up, and there's sick time. So the officers will be staffed if you have a situation where officers call in sick for Shelburne. If officers were to be assigned to Shelburne 3 on a platoon for a night and they called in sick, then we shift platoon strength across from other zones. If the detachment gets too busy, then we pull strength from other detachments, our neighboring detachments.
how would you pull somebody to another accident when you only have 3 on duty? You're going to leave 3 sections of the county empty.
The officers will attend to calls for service and then they return to their zone. They're not going to spend an entire night at a collision, and if they did, then we will call on other detachments to assist us. For example, Wellington to the west, Gray to the north, Huronia west, Nottawasaga.
So if I'm getting robbed in my store, you bring someone from Wellington 2 hours later? Like, let's use our brains here a little bit.
Pardon me?
Let's use common sense a little bit.
Yes, sir.
You cannot be covered with only 3 officers in the county of Dufferin.
Sir, the sergeants are responsible to make sure that they employ their officers according to priority calls for service. If they're on a call for service already and another priority call for service comes in, those officers can be redeployed from what they're doing. And we bring officers up from other areas to manage it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
My question to you is this. How will large, serious calls in neighboring detachments affect the staffing levels here in the town of Shelburne? Will Shelburne officers be sent to assist other attachment and leave no coverage in Shelburne?
Officers may be detached from Shelburne to another adjoining zone, while the member of the adjoining zone assists in another detachment, yes.
Thank you.
Good evening, Dan Sample, 352 Orbis Crescent, here in Shelburne, 9336. I do have multiple questions, so I will go to the back of the line. In the past,
Thank you.
in the last 90 days, has there been time in Dufferin County been policed with 3 or less officers? I think you already answered that question. But I just would like to understand it a little bit better, is that if Shelburne comes on, does that mean more officers are available to be deployed at that point? So does your rate go up then? Or do you still stay at a three-person level or less? How do you manage that? Do you understand that?
No.
Okay. So you said earlier that you could have only 3 officers on duty. Could. I think you said 3 plus 1, so 4. If Shelburne comes on, so it's another area to look after, does the number go up? Or are you looking at 5 to 6 officers then, or are you looking at still maintaining a 3 or a 1 level, 3 to 1 level ratio there?
No, the model with Shelburne amalgamated with the Dufferin detachment is for 7 constables and a sergeant.
So it will go up then, is what you're just telling me. Okay.
Corey Trainer, 416 Ridgeville Crescent. My question is the integrated policing model ever used by OPP detachments as a way to reduce their overtime costs by understaffing, knowing that other detachments are to send officers to assist if needed? You want me to re-ask it?
Yeah.
Is the integrated policing model ever used by OPP detachments as a way to reduce their overtime costs by understaffing, knowing that other detachments are to send officers to assist if needed?
No, the integrated policing model is used if I can't get officers in on. So, for example, should we have an incident that comes up that's taking up all of our personnel and someone's called in sick, and I can't get someone to come in on time on short notice, then I'll reach out to other detachments.
Okay, so if that were to happen, then one officer could be pulled from Shelburne. If it were to happen in a different county, you may have to pull someone from Shelburne to go and support Gray.
Sorry, just repeat your question again. So,
Should that happen in Gray County,
right.
would you have to possibly pull an officer from Shelburne Police, our location, to go and support Gray County?
Yeah.
And potentially that is a potential scenario, yes. But again, the idea of the integrated service delivery is if an officer takes a statement out of Shelburne to say service Gray, if stuff is happening here, we have the flexibility to bring officers here to replace that officer that left. Do you understand?
Right, but it has to end at a certain point, right? You can't just pull all of Bay Peter to.
Yeah, I understand. These are exceptional scenarios that we're dealing with. Right? This is not something that happens every single shift.
Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, elected members of the council, and OPP officers. My name is Alec Coles, and I live at 626 Main Street East. Now, the Shelburne Police Service is a very important part of this growing community. It is an essential part of our growth as this town is developing. People of Shelburne cannot afford to lose it. We have officers who have lived in this town most of their lives and have also got awards for acts of bravery. They know every part of this town and are also aware who may want to disrupt the peace of our lovely town. The response time for the SPS is very quick. Shelburne Police Service is very quick. If Shelburne was to go with the OPP, the response time would be longer. Bandits already know that and have calculated the time response, which enables them more time to escape. This town has lost its little hospital, There was a fight for Fiddle Park, and now our local police force is being negotiated. Believe me, the next time it will be our local council. We have to keep Shelburne Police Services. I know there is a difference in price, but it's the public the price is for. The loss is our officers and the people of this town. We're paying the money anyway, we'll carry on doing it. Now, here's my question. The OPP currently provides municipal policing services to 323 municipalities on a cost recovery basis. So if we carry on paying the same amount, there's going to be additional costs for services that the OPP, brilliant organisation, respect them fully, who are going to charge us for those in the future. That's my question to the OPP, and how much are those costs going to be on top of what we're already paying? It's a difficult one for you to answer, so I'll give you time.
Just so I'm clear, Alec, and thank you for your always colourful comments. I do appreciate it.
Mr. Mayor, I will give you a copy of
Okay.
this, but there are a lot
You have more questions, that's fine. If you have notes, save them until your final question. But maybe just so I can drill down a little bit, just to help the panel, is what you're asking sort of for an overview of the billing model, and then in addition, what charges would be on top of that base service?
I've already read about it on the OPP police site, that there are certain things that we're going to be charged for, but I know already that the OPP, we have the dogs, we have the drug squad, we have the helicopters, and all that could be incorporated. The last time I heard and saw a helicopter landing near to the sewage plant was a training program. So I've never heard. The other one was somebody injured themselves and they were rushed up to hospital. So that's I know it's a consideration, and it is quite an expense. I've never seen dogs well, I have seen dogs, but not OPP dogs in the town. So all those other things that are added on to that could be, an expense for what we're already seem to be paying for. And personally, I don't mind paying the taxes that we have right now to keep our Shelburne police station. We need it.
Okay, so,
Oh, sir.
You have an answer first.
all right. I wasn't sure if that was an answer or.
So a couple points. First, what I just want to address this notion of response times. Now, again, the OPP does not measure response times. That's because we have technology. We have cruisers that are out in the communities. They have mobile workstations, so they're able to be mobile. Response times are very difficult to measure in a model like that, as opposed to somebody like a fire department where there's a base location that they respond from, right? So with this notion that response times would automatically be slower if you went to the OPP I would disagree with that. We would have officers in this zone, which is a Shelburne would be an assigned zone. There would be officers assigned there, and they would respond accordingly. So on the other point, and I believe, and forgive me if I get a little confused here in terms of answering the right question, but I believe you're talking about the billing model and what sort of extra costs could be brought into place. So just to give you the very basics again as a reminder for everyone, the transition contract is what initially the town would sign up for 3+ years. That's an FTE-based model. With a set number of hours. There's no additional costs. That's what you pay for is those number of FTEs and the hours per FTE, which I believe is 1,417 hours, I believe. When you get into the billing model basically is a situation where you have two components: base service, which is basically the boots on the ground officers, bricks and mortar policing, which includes proactive patrols, the ability to respond to calls for service, but then you also have that calls for service component. In terms of extra costs over and above that, currently what would be extra would be for municipalities who want to consider enhanced services, and those are for positions that are specifically designed to address specific needs. For example, if they want somebody, a specific municipality wants a traffic patrol officer, that's all they do. That would be an extra service. If they want somebody that works perhaps in the school as a school resource officer, Monday to Friday, 8 to 4, for example, that's all that their duties would be involved with. That would be extra. But in terms of extra costs, that's what I can think of in terms of enhancements. That's what I think municipalities will be experiencing for extra costs. But the whole idea of the billing model is provincial. You have that base service to respond to calls, and you have the calls for service.
So just as a brief follow-up, if I may, Alec gave a couple of examples, one being helicopter, one being dogs or canine unit. Would the town of Shelburne or any other municipality who is policed by OPP have to pay extra if those services were required for an incident within our municipality?
The answer is no.
Mr. Chair.
Language 3141 Main Street. My question is with regard to the educational liaison officer that the OPP is going to be providing. That, correct me if I'm wrong, they're going to be one officer covering 11 schools. Is that correct?
So currently, the Dufferin Detachment has a community services officer. That community services officer liaises within the schools. She teaches the OPP Kids program, and she makes lectures and attends at the request of teachers. She has other functions that she performs. However, she doesn't have that many schools. With the increase in schools, it would be the increased amount of time that the officer would spend there. And it is dependent on what the request of the police services board is in regard to what services they would like to do in the schools.
Okay, so we have one officer covering the county for that. If I'm not, help me get some clarity in this. We've got one person that's responsible for visiting all of the schools and providing program as requested. Is that correct?
No, she teaches the OPP Kids program, as well as attends at the request of different schools to provide lectures and to teach classes, to be at the school. Our other officers are permitted at any time to go to any of the schools and check in.
Okay. Here's my concern. All right, I teach up at high school. The Shelburne Force is at our school 5 days a week. They come in around 11:30, they leave 40 minutes later. They walk the halls, they meet with the kids, they establish a rapport, a liaison with the kids, okay, and a relationship with the kids in the community. I'm just wondering how often an OPP officer would be wandering the halls in that role and what that cost might be. Because it's included in what we're getting in with the Shelburne Force now. They also attend our breakfast programs for the junior schools, two of the junior schools in the community. So,
So, as I said, it would be at the request of the police services board. We work together with them to fulfill the needs that they want, what they want to see us do in the school. If it's an hour every day or to drop in and liaise with the kids, then that can be incorporated into the officer's day. If it's a full-time job for the officer, we may have to consider an enhancement to the contract. But right now, it would just be expanded to what the police services board wants. So yes, that service will exist.
we wouldn't have cost. Is that what you're saying?
No extra cost,
Well,
and if that's what you want, then that's what we'll work to do. We'll work with the police services board to provide that service.
I'll
Sorry, so you was talking about a specific time every single day?
Every lunch hour, from about 11:30 to 12:15, 12:20. We have at least one Shelburne police officer come into the school, wander the halls, say hi to the kids, establish a relationship with the kids, and you know, establish a community and a friendship, if you will, with the kids. Okay, they also come to two of the public schools breakfast clubs in the morning for about 20 to 30 minutes and establish that rapport with the kids, and get to know the kids, get to know the community. I mean, it's a two-way street. The kids get to see them and aren't afraid of the police, as some kids might be. And the officers get to know the kids on something other than a professional level, if you will. They also liaison with the staff. They also come to our school and manage our lockdown procedures on a regular basis and offer enhancements and suggestions on ways we can better protect the kids if we ever are into that situation. I find it difficult to understand how the OPP is going to provide that level of service every lunch hour to establish that kind of community relationship with our students.
So what I can say is it doesn't have to be difficult, and we can certainly provide that. Now, given operational reasons, right? So if there's a pressing call that requires officers to attend at another location during that specific lunch hour period, perhaps they wouldn't be there at that specific time. You get what I'm saying? So operationally, I mean, we have to be realistic, right? But certainly, we encourage our officers. They're local. They're tied to the community, and that would be a message you can certainly convey to the local detachment commander or through the police services board, or call the detachment and speak with one of the local officers, and certainly cultivate that relationship. But we have the ability to do that. That's in our base service. That's a part of being policing our communities, is being tied and building those relationships, which include working with the schools. Does that answer your question?
Yes, to the point that, I'd like to point out that we already have that now on a very consistent basis.
Sure.
And there are very few days, if any, in a month that we don't have an officer in at lunchtime. At least one to come in, for that purpose. Not to enforce the law, just to meet with the kids, just to be part of the community.
Mm-hmm.
On average, how many days would you predict, or could you predict, an officer visiting the school?
The answer to that is that the officers, if it comes to pass that the decision is made to amalgamate the officers from the service that are existing officers that choose to join the OPP, we could maintain those roles. Therefore, the shifts are going to change every 2 or 3 days, and it's going to be different officers. I would prefer as a detachment commander that it's not a single solitary officer every day, but that every officer or each platoon has an officer that performs that role. And that allows more flexibility rather than if you have a single officer trying to fulfill that role.
Just to clarify, we have a rotation of officers that come through the school. It's not one specific officer, it's all of the officers on the detachment that come through the school. So all of the officers get to meet a good majority of the kids and, build a community relationship. And I think that's something that's important that needs to be brought to bear here on this discussion. Okay, thanks.
If you're a repeat questioner, you can skip the name and.
So name and address, I don't need to say it again. It has sounded very easy for Shelburne police officers to become OPP officers in the costing process. During the previous Orangeville costing, it was said that it was easy as switching shoulder flashes. I have since heard that it isn't that easy, and that our current Shelburne officers will have to apply the new hires, apply as their new hires, and not guaranteed a job. Is that correct?
So I wasn't a part of the Orangeville costing, so I can't speak specifically to what was said there. What I can say is this. Officers do have to apply, they have to make an application, and they're subject to a background check. Now, there's a bit of confusion out there that they would be subject to the same rigors as a recruit going through the process. That can't be further from the truth. I think it's incumbent upon the organization to ensure that the officers that choose to apply, they do have to make that choice. We don't automatically give them a uniform, you know. So if they choose to apply, I think it's incumbent upon us, and I think upon the communities that we serve to ensure that they meet the basic standards as required as legislation and police service act. There's a number of standards that police officers have to basically meet. So the process, in essence, is to address those standards, to make the application, and do those background and security checks, which I think would be probably what the municipality would expect of us to do. But this notion of you know, this huge lengthy process where they have to go through test one test, that's not the case. It is a different process for officers that come over or choose to apply to come over to the OPP.
So your answer is they're not guaranteed their jobs then?
They're not.
As a follow-up to that, is there any sort of average that you folks have, you know, in terms of what the average number of municipal officers who are transitioning over to OPP in terms of that hiring process would be successful? Do we know that? Or?
Yeah, I can't give you figures right now. I can tell you this. About a month ago, we took over Wing. Now there was 6 officers who applied. All 6 were successful. Midland, I believe out of the 24, I'm not entirely sure on the numbers. I believe there were 24 officers. Only 18 out of the 24 applied and 15 came over. 13? Sorry, 13. Sorry, my apologies, 13. So 13 out of 18. The other, I don't know what it is. 6 of 8. So Sterling Rodden, which was what, 2, 3? So out of 8 applied, 6 were successful.
Without, you know, obviously getting into any, you know, particular specifics, are there any sort of anecdotal examples that you could offer that may, you know, mean that a particular officer would not qualify?
I can't offer you a specific, yeah, I mean, there would be such things as criminal records, prior convictions, that. Yeah, and as I said, I think I said at the initial presentation in January, is that our Career Development Bureau does have a session that sits down with the officers who are interested in applying, and they offer a pretty lengthy information session on other processes.
Thank you.
Ralph Larry, 250 Main Street, RD 386. Mine was for response time, because I've called like 10 times this year to the Shelburne Police Department. They've been in like 3-4 minutes at a time. The little girl hit on the street that I helped, and I got a 911, they were there, but the phone was ringing. But you've answered that question. So I'm going to change it, are all your OPP officers, no disrespect for the OPP, but are all your OPP officers going to be trained in CPR?
Yes, correct.
They are?
Yeah, we have them, yes.
Okay, but yeah, because their response time has been like 3 to 5 minutes at my house for different incidents, and they're like that. Like when I called OPP in Grand Valley when I lived there, I called 911 by accident, and it took 45 minutes for the OPP to come to my house. But that's just response time.
Good evening, my name is Charlotte McAlpin, 901 Cook Crescent, L6A, 3W1, 3B1. My thing is, I've moved to this community almost 4 years now, And what drew me to this community was the togetherness. Coming to Shelburne and meeting the police department, it's like a family-oriented organization. I've had some issues and the police come, and I don't feel like I'm to be afraid when they come in. The OPP, I've met them on the road, and I don't have that kind of connection with the OPP. No disrespect, please. I don't have that connection. I look forward to when I'm driving in from work in the night and I see the Shelburne police stop me and they're doing their ride checks. I look forward to a ride check. You know, just that little moment to talk to them makes my night. You know, pop a joke or two and you go. I don't have that rapport with the OPP. Our policing thing is different, and I love the Shelburne policing, and this is why I have my 2 boys and my daughter here, and I feel comfortable knowing that they are with a community that in case anything, they have someone they can talk to, and I think the Shelburne Police Department should remain. As this community is growing, why do you want to remove the togetherness that is in the community? And it's like a division you're bringing in at this present moment. We need the Shelburne police. They know the ins and outs of this area. You understand? We have different, a wider community coming in. So we need police that already knows the community. The community is growing. We need to know that. You know how I look forward to when I look through my back door, I see the police driving around. I feel safe. I feel secure. Why are they trying to take that away from the community? That is dividing the community.
So in terms of a question, I think what you're getting at is, you know, can the OPP match the sort of personal rapport that the current Shelburne police officers have with the community, and in terms of knowledge of community and everything else?
That is one too, and one of the other questions that I have is, are they willing to have that relationship with the community? That's another thing, and be not like, we pay taxes, yes. And I mean, more revenues are coming in to Shelburne. So what I think we need to do is to think about the community is growing, build us a better police station, think about bringing us hospital, think about bringing us transit. Those are stuff that should be on the table, not to divide the police and the community. We need the Shelburne community. I come inside the police station and the receptionist are there. You feel comfortable. This is the only police station that I go into and I feel comfortable talking to one of the officers.
So again, I think to distill it to a question, it's essentially what level of assurance could the OPP offer that, you know, that the same kind of community building relationships would be offered?
Certainly. So currently at Dufferin Detachment, a number of the officers that work there live within Dufferin County. They live in Melanchthon, Imrit, Waldemar, Orangeville, Shelburne proper. We don't ask them to move when they join the OPP. And we wouldn't ask the current Shelburne officers to move or to leave their community. We would have them here in the community working with you and maintaining those relationships. The officers of my detachment have relationships within the communities where they police. I know for a fact that my officer from Grand Valley Detachment who lives in Orangeville goes to Grand Valley every day, does foot patrol, goes into the businesses, meets with people. and goes door to door in communities and speaks to people. That's how we maintain community policing, and that's our plan for here.
All right, Jim.
Just one more sort of rule of the game that I'll throw in just because we do have a lineup. Try if possible to limit the amount of commentary to a little bit of context if you need that to frame your question, but we are trying to get as many questions in here tonight as possible within the time permitted, so if you can try to limit that commentary and get to the question as quickly as possible, I think everybody would appreciate that.
Move as quick as I can. Mr. Mayor and Council, OPP guests, my name is Timothy Orlando, Staff Sergeant reference Shelburne proper. My address is actually 50602 on Highway 89. Postal code is Lima 9 Victor 0 November 6, which is in Molinar, yards from the boundary. Hopefully I can still be included in the conversation. I rent a farm. I'm in the horse breeding and training business, and have been for 25 years. I spend about $500,000 a year, employ 6 people, spend lots of my dollars in the community, and one of the reasons I moved my farming business to Shelburne 3.5 years ago is very similar to what the last lady spoke about. Family, togetherness, safe, friendly, embracing community, which I believed when I moved here, and I still believe 3.5 years later. And it's pretty important to me. I feel safe. It's a great community. So I'm concerned if there would be any change in that. And a few other things that I've noted is if you're going to have less police, then you're obviously going to have less revenue because they're not going to create as much revenue because there won't be as many police officers creating revenue for the town. So hopefully that's noted by the administrative officer and the financial people that are analyzing that. And of course, with less police, we'll be anticipating an increase in the crime rate. Not sure if everyone's comfortable with that, but that would probably be something to take note of. Then I did a little fact checking with some folks at the administrative office to find out that there was currently 15 Shelburne police officers, along with 1 special constable, 2 administrative ladies, one has worked here for 32 years and the other for 10. And in addition to that, there was 5 unpaid community volunteers. So that's 18 paid people and 5 volunteers. In a growing community, we probably might need a little more than that. I'm suspicious that the plan that's being contemplated would net us down to about 3 police officers in the region in lieu of the current contingent. So I would be skeptical of how they were going to be able to support the community. That's just me. If we're one of the fastest growing communities in Ontario, likely we should plan for increase in police officers and other support services. That's what I would do.
Just for the sake of clarity,
Yes.
not all officers who are currently employed by Shelburne Police Service are on duty at the same time. I think that's what you're referring to when you talk about 3. So I mean, we can talk about number of on-duty officers at any given time, but just to clarify, not all officers are on duty all the time.
Right. So that group of officers have been here for probably on average 15 or 20 years, and the police department's been here for about 100 years, as I gather. But they're not all on duty 24 hours a day because they need a bit of a break here and there. I get that. So with the new model, it probably encourages a bit more lawlessness with less police force, but we're going to save a few nickels. One of my questions, Mr. Mayor, actually, is if there's a similar strategy contemplated for a reduction in firemen, emergency service people or senior centers or kids, because if we wiped out all those services and stuff, we would save a bit more money. So that's really my question, and then my suggestion is if we're hell-bent on saving money with the new advent of technology and stuff, maybe we could eliminate all the police and all the fire department and replace them with smartphones.
So I assume your question is slightly tongue-in-cheek, but to answer it, no, it's not part of our calculus to reduce the number of firefighters. And to be clear, just in terms of additional background, in addition to what the CAO had outlined earlier, what we are faced with here is not really a discussion or decision between OPP versus status quo. What we do know is that the current facility that's housing the Shelburne Police Service is no longer functional. So it either needs to be replaced with a new building or some other accommodation that will meet its current needs. So that's really what has sort of triggered this process. It's not as though we can just close the door and carry on, life as is. We need a new facility. So before council committed to spending whatever amount of money that's going to be, we decided to look at the additional options, one of which includes the OPP. So just so we're clear on that. And I guess the follow-up question in terms of crime rates going up, I'm not sure, again, do you folks have any stats in terms of relative crime rates in municipalities both before and after they made a switch to OPP?
I don't specifically have stats. I mean, I can certainly do some research and attempt to find that out. I don't know if there would be any database available that would offer that information. But I just want to address the point that you made, sir, with regards to, I believe, and I apologize if I'm misunderstanding it, but I think you're under the understanding that we're reducing service levels. We're reducing officers. We are not. The transition contract, again, if the municipality decides to come to the OPP, Shelburne currently has, I believe, it's 15 FTEs. We would incorporate all those positions. There would be no reduction in FTEs for the officers.
So the good news then for the fellow, the educational fellow that asked the question, you wanted just some certainty that the policeman would be in the school on a daily basis. I'm delighted to hear that we're not going to reduce any services, so we can let everybody, all the parents know that we're still going to have the policeman in the schools every day because we won't reduce anything. I'm happy to hear that. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, for your time.
Thank you. And just to clarify, sometimes we can get lost in acronyms. FTE means full-time equivalent.
Hello, Mr. Mayor, councillors, guests from the OPP. My name is Nicole Libery. I live at 762 Greenwood Crescent in Shelburne. I'm going to build on some of the conversations and the questions that have already come up about the social piece. We know that there's a great return on investment in our town on the way that our police. My 5-year-old daughter has had frequent conversations with the police driving by, has respect for them, but is not fearful of them. As Charnette had mentioned, one of the speakers before this, the way that those interactions can take place and demeanor and the way that things are said can be felt very differently. So my question, just to cut short and get to the point, is I'm interested to know what training the OPP officers that could potentially be coming to our community have in terms of building those relationships, in terms of building trust and confidence and not feeling like a criminal or a victim should they have an interaction with the OPP. Do you have ongoing training? Is that a priority for the OPP to have that? I heard in one of the previous answers that if it was a need for Shelburne to have an OPP at the high school, then yes, we could have that. It's almost like a request and we shall provide. But in terms of engaging with the community and providing a similar feel to what we are accustomed to, do the OPP officers have that ability and those personal skills to give us something similar to that? So it's about people skills. Do OPP officers, are they trained? Are those skills maintained in people skills, building relationships, community engagement?
I mean, the simple answer is yes. I mean, the way we as police officers fundamentally work is working with the community. And our officers are operate on a number of, I guess, mindsets, but one that I quickly could think comes to mind is community mobilization. And every officer is in tune to the idea of ways of addressing problems. And the key is engaging with the community. That's what I believe every police officer in Ontario is set up to do and should be doing. In terms of training, again, we for that specific community mobilization piece, we have had training on that. But our
Is that yearly, or is that part of the orientation, check mark, you have people skills and off you go? Is it something that's continued? Because we know how, like, research demonstrates how important key things like emotional intelligence, the way we respect one another, that's key to building relationships in communities.
Yeah, and I would suggest that every officer understands that that's vitally important. It's kind of a difficult question.
No, I'm asking about training. So,
Sure.
you know, is this something that's important to the OPP? And something that's done yearly? That would give me a bit of confidence, is if your division, your dispatchment, that's a priority up here, that we want our officers to have great people skills.
Yeah, I think that would be expected of all of us to have people skills. I mean, our business is working with the community, and I think that would be inherent in our jobs, and that would be a given, if that helps.
It helps.
Okay.
It's just, I know several people here have come up and shared that that's not what they've experienced.
Okay.
So that's, I think, a concern.
So just if I can jump in for a second too, does the OPP offer courses to its officers or training programs to its officers that address, you know, that community engagement, you know,
Most
community
certainly.
interaction piece? Okay,
Yes.
and I think that's, is there some formal program in place? Chief, good to see you.
Good evening, Your Worship. My name is Brad Lunwich. I live on Soap Drive here in town. My question, and I'll give the OPP panel a break for my question. I think my question is directed more towards council than the OPP representatives here. As you alluded to earlier with the gentleman that was before the last young lady with a question, we're going through this process to explore one alternative or one solution to the problems with our current Shelburne Police Services housing. Since we've begun down this path of seeking OPP costing, it seems to me that nothing has been done to continue any of the other avenues in regards to solving that building problem. I understand once an OPP costing has been requested, certain things do have to come on hold. Seeing the timeline as presented by our CAO earlier and having to have an answer for the OPP by the 15th of July, and realizing, at least from my point of view, that this isn't a one service versus another service, which one is better at policing. Frankly, I interact with them both regularly, and both are fine professional services that do their jobs very, very well. My question is, based on the timeline that was presented earlier, and not seeing other avenues other than this one being explored as a solution to our current situation, does council, one, have other plans, or are they seeking other solutions? And the second part of that is July 15th, does that give council enough time to make an accurate and a well thought out decision? Or will we be forced into making a decision OPP versus SBS without knowing, other alternatives that are potentially available to us?
Okay. No, and that's a great question. And at the outset, let me and exploring options. In addition to the OPP option, last term of council had two different iterations of a police accommodation subcommittee that looked at a number of facility options, including a new build, including a retrofit of the existing facility, and including purchasing an unidentified building of a certain square footage and retrofitting that. There never was any particular building identified, but just in abstract, what sort of cost would we be looking at there? We do know with some degree of certainty, as the work of those committees revealed, that a new build in the size and proportion that we're being told would be required is going to cost somewhere in the range of $4 to $7 million. Just as of last week, at our last council meeting, I tabled a notice of motion wherein I'm asking staff to go back and look at that information yet again to see if there is an opportunity that maybe wasn't fully explored in the past to address those accommodation needs that we currently have with our existing facility through a renovation and retrofit combination. And if there's a way to do that for somewhere around $3 million, that motion will be voted on next Monday night at the April 8th meeting. So to answer your question directly, yes, there is a lot of other work going on behind the scenes, both what has been done and what's continuing to be done. I think I can speak for all of council, and by all means, if a member has something else to add, please do. But I think for all of us, the one thing that we want to make sure through this process is that when it comes time for us to make that decision, we have had an opportunity to look at all of those options and discount the ones that aren't viable, and then hopefully focus in and narrow our focus on the ones that really are within our grasp. Either way, it's not going to be an easy decision, but that's what we're here to do. It's not always an easy job. If we could be governed by survey and we wouldn't have to worry about it.
So to clarify then, and I'm not trying to pigeonhole you, but you are confident that by the July 15th, when these folks have a hard deadline, that we will have all the other data and information at hand so that council can make an informed decision. I know if I came to you now and said, $4 to $7 million for a new fire station, cap in hand, I know what you'd tell me.
And
yet we haven't seen.
Don't forget.
We've seen hard numbers from these folks for the first 3 years. Everybody's here to answer questions, ask their questions, what happens beyond that. But we haven't seen hard numbers on any other possible solutions yet.
Well, I just gave you some. But don't forget, Chief, this process started in 2015. The Police Service Board presented Council of the Day with a report indicating that, well, just let me finish, indicating that the accommodation requirements at our current facility were not meeting their needs.
Right.
So that triggered the beginning of this process. And as I mentioned, throughout the course of time, there have been 2 different subcommittees struck to look at specifically 3 potential options: new build, renovation, purchase of a building, an existing building, and a retrofit. That work has been taking place over the last few years. So this is not as though it's an issue that started on January 8th when the OPP delivered their costing and we have 6 months to make a decision. This has been an ongoing issue. This piece is only one piece of what council has looked at.
But in effect, though, it does create a very strict timeline. Like I just said, no hard numbers on the other side. You said between 4 and 7 million.
It creates
so
a deadline.
There's a pretty good gap there,
Yeah, no, I'm not going to debate, but I mean, it does create a deadline in terms of our response to the OPP,
right.
Whether we accept their proposal or not. That July 15th deadline does not mean it's a deadline in terms of this whole process. If council decides that we are not willing to accept the OPP proposal, that doesn't mean that we're out of time when it comes to the other options.
Right.
So,
no, and I
to
understand
keep things in perspective.
I was just looking if we were going to compare oranges to oranges and try to come to some type of reasonable conclusion by their deadline. If there will be information, like I said, for other alternatives, we'll be ready and prepared and visible by then.
And that's another key reason I think why council decided to engage the services of an independent consultant. We have tasked that consultant, who's actually in the room tonight, I won't identify him, but we have actually tasked that consultant with not only doing a financial analysis, because I mean what we keep hearing, over and over again, that this is not just about money. We're well aware of that. Please rest assured, we get that. So we've asked that consultant to do a financial analysis, but also do a service delivery analysis. And, as the CAO indicated, that report will be to council well in advance of that deadline. So a lot of that heavy lifting in terms of the analysis work is going to be done by this professional. That's what he does for a living. So rather than us try to, fly by the seat of our pants and analyze this stuff, we've hired a professional to do that so that we can be confident in the information we're receiving and rely on that information when it comes time to make a decision.
Thank you. I'm back.
You might as well just pull up the seat.
I keep waiting my turn. It has been suggested that detachment commanders receive a positive performance appraisals as well as bonuses if the overtime hours in their detachment are kept to minimum levels. Is this not incentive to allow minimum staffing levels to take advantage of integrated policing model?
I don't get a bonus. There's no bonus for detachment commanders.
Okay. Do you receive appraisal forms? Do you receive anything to say that you perform very, very well in keeping your hours down?
Not in relation to overtime. I receive an appraisal from each police service board on our crime clearance rates, meeting the activities that we lay out in our 3-year action plan, hitting our priorities, and how close we get to those. It has nothing to do with overtime.
Okay, so if all those are met, so I'm assuming you have some sort of overtime is not free willy if that happens, correct? You just can't, an officer just can't have his, whatever overtime is required, can he? Can he? No? So if he's, so I'm assuming if he's on a call, he's in overtime hours, then he's got to finish the call, correct? Or does he get replaced? Or what happens?
Each situation is different, but if an officer is at a call and he's going over his shift, then he's going to get paid overtime for it.
Okay. And then does that reflect back to any of the other officers that are above him that are in command of him? No?
I don't understand what you're getting at.
I'm just asking if you told me you didn't get any bonuses. I'm just trying to figure out if that's absolutely true. That's all.
No bonuses.
No
Okay.
bonuses.
No, thank you.
Hello, I'm Amber Kinsley. I live on 529 Days Drive in Shelburne. I completed the town survey that was sent out. Now, as much as I would love to see Main Street get an uplift, it's not an essential need. I'd rather keep my family and this town safe. So if Shelburne goes OPP and now my 36 cents of my tax dollar that was going towards the town policing is lowered, and the money I'm saving on policing is now being spent on a facelift for this town, I'm not really saving. I'm sorry to say that. Let's be real here, our taxes dollars will always go up, so I would rather it go towards the safety of my family in this town, all due respect to the OPP, but I would rather pay as much money of my tax dollars to keep this town and my family safe.
Good. Yes.
I've heard complaints from Grey County. I do have family that live there that have had to call the OPP, and it's taken 45 minutes to come to the call. Now, at that time, whatever happened, there was a person, a stranger in their backyard. It took 45 minutes. The stranger had gone, and the OPP basically tried to tell them that they were lying and that there was nobody there, because by the time they got there, the situation was already done and over with. I understand that keeping track of the average of call times is difficult to obtain, that you already said that tonight. However, it was an essential part that I wanted to hear. Can you comment on the response time and why it would take an OPP officer 45 minutes to respond to a call?
I can't respond to that. I just don't know the specifics of that incident. So if I could understand it more specifically what happened in that case, perhaps would be an explanation. I want to make things very clear. if there's concerns or complaints about the service, the public has a right to obviously address that with the OPP. So whether that be with the local detachment or directly through some sort of regional headquarters or general headquarters, but by all means, if there's concerns over service delivery, we have to know about it.
So
And that way we can address those issues.
okay, so if there was a car accident and somebody complaining that a domestic was happening in their house, do you guys then put a priority on which one they go to first?
Again, I can't speak, I have never worked in our communication centers, which obviously is the nerve center for our incoming calls and dispatching our officers. I would assume that there would be a priority system. And obviously the priority would be the assessing of the situation to figure out whether there's a threat to safety or security of people. If there was somebody hurt or injured, obviously that would go up the queue. So yes, there would be a prioritization of calls based on the seriousness of the call.
Thank you. Unfortunately, I've had to use the Shelburne Police a couple times for incidents, and they were at my house within 5 minutes. And were able to help and keep our families safe. So thank you.
Hey, Mr. Mayor.
Not mine. Sorry, Mayor. Just one quick question, because I know there are a lot of people behind me have more questions to ask. To the OPP panel, I've heard that the OPP have not honored their staffing levels in Midland since taking over. Is that true?
I believe that the Midland detachment is at full complement now. They were an increase in officers put there from what they had with their regular police service, and they are at full complement.
So it's not true then?
Correct.
Hi there, it's Alex McClellan. I'm Shelburne's online news source, and I'm also a resident here in Shelburne. First of all, I'd like to say thank you to the OPP and the Shelburne Police Services. In the event they ever have to save my life, I just wanted to thank you in advance for your work and outstanding reputations. But my question here tonight, after having heard you being unable to establish a bottom line for how Shelburnites could be impacted by upcoming tax hikes, you started a base module of 300 something a year per household. Since you can't come up with a bottom line, I've decided to try another approach, and I want to ask this of our council members, if they clearly understand the concept of leasing. I can tell you that when I was much younger and, a lot more dumb, I leased a futon. And by the time I paid for that futon, I could have bought 5 new ones. It took that long and it cost that much. So I was wondering if the OPP could provide a ballpark for the difference between what our taxes are now, and council could consider what they would be if we went OPP, just a guesstimation, just something for somebody to work with, a bottom line. We need some sort of ballpark figure.
I'll take a stab at that. So just for the sake of clarity, and the OPP representatives that are here can correct me if I'm wrong, but the contract with OPP is not a leasing model. It's a contract for service, just for the sake of clarity. What council heard at last week's meeting that outlined the costing model was that essentially after year 3, any municipality who was then policed by the OPP would be billed according to their policing model, which is based on 2 factors. One, the number of households, and secondly, the number of incidents, which is calculated on a 4-year average, I believe. So because they don't know what that 4-year average in terms of incidents would be, they're not prepared to comment on what our cost for service might be in year 4. That said, that's one of the things we have asked the consultant to try to wrestle with. So when we get that consultant's report, part of what's going to be set out in that is a projection for what potentially our billing rate would be in year 4 and onward. So I think what he's going to do in terms of methodology is look at the number of households that we currently have, look at the projection in terms of growth, okay, so for 4 years out from now, and then also look historically at the number of calls for service that we've had under the Shelburne Police and try to project those forward, and then work that through the OPP billing model to try to give us, you know, some sense of what that bottom line, as you call it, might be in year 4, 5, 6, 7. So I guess my comment would be, you know, hold tight, that information is coming. We're as anxious to see it as everybody else is. The other piece of information that the OPP did offer last week was what was the online resource that can show what every municipality in Ontario currently under OPP policing is paying. So if anybody's interested, you can go on and search any municipality across the province that is under OPP policing to see what they are paying on a per household basis.
Well, first thing, in my investigation, and believe me, I did call many people, the module's based on MPAC, and they rely heavily on Stats Canada. They're 2 years behind. So the OPP will have to work and be paid for their duties. And it's going to be 2 years behind in our population. Number of houses, that kind of thing. So that's going to add up substantially. The other thing
But
I
that
wanted...
probably means fewer homes, though, which would play to our favor, I would think.
No, not really. We'll be lower than estimated because they're going in blind.
Yeah, but if part of the cost is based on number of households, if it's 2 years behind and we're growing, then it would stand to reason that we're probably paying less than maybe what we should if they were more accurate numbers. But anyways.
Okay. Is it okay if I ask one more, or do I have to? Okay.
Just before you do it, I think my colleague would like to make a comment. Oh. Okay. Yeah, okay. Yeah. Sorry. Yes. Councillor Fegan just corrected me. I misspoke when I said households. It's properties. Number of properties.
Right. My other question is that when this council, who was newly elected, were newly elected, almost every one of you is on camera saying that you will do what the people want. And I'm wondering if there's a better way than what we're doing now with like an online survey to reach the entire community and find out what they want. Yeah. And will council act on what the people say? Or will they make the tough decision and do what they think is best?
I guess that's an individual question for each council member. I think the one thing that's been made abundantly clear throughout this process is that this council is committed to an engagement process. That there are other municipalities that don't go through these steps. We're having this meeting. We've had several public meetings. We're having an online engagement session. All of our council meetings are public. As individual council members, I think the town is fortunate, if I can say this. All of us are quite visible in the community, and I think we're all extremely approachable. And I mean, to address some of the comments in relation to policing, in terms of that community engagement piece and building relationships, I would hope that any taxpayer or any resident within the town of Shelburne would be more than comfortable enough to approach any of us at any time, whether it's before or after a meeting, or if you see us on the street or in the grocery store. And I can tell you that happens quite regularly, and it's part of the job, and it's part of the job, frankly, that I like. But, we are doing what we can do to try to get a sense of where the public is on this. Is there a perfect way to do it? Is there a perfect science? No. You asked me in your interview last week after the council meeting if we had considered doing a referendum. I explained briefly that in order to orchestrate a referendum in the province of Ontario at the municipal level, that question has to be integrated as part of the election process. And there are certain deadlines and restrictions in terms of having that question qualified through the Ministry of Municipal Affairs. And quite frankly, the last term of council was not in a position to put that question on the ballot. Even still, what was our voter turnout percentage last election? 36%? Even if it was on the ballot, and every voter who exercised their right to vote made a comment on that, we're still only reaching 30% of those who are eligible to speak up. So again, this goes back to my very first comment. I really do appreciate the fact that all of you are here tonight expressing your thoughts, and I encourage you to keep it up. Not only tonight, but as we get closer to July 15th.
Thank you, Mayor. That was well put.
Hi.
Hello again.
It's me again. My piece on this is, why tear a good thing down? We don't want this Shelburne police station to be torn down. We would rather a building be built and it stays together. That's my ending on it. I have to go home to my 2 boys. We're growing a community. Let's grow the community that our young men that are coming up feel comfortable talking to the police. My 2 boys feel comfortable talking to the police. Last week, I think there was a truck that catching fire out on 89 across from my area. One of my boys and his friends called the police. Not many kids feel comfortable enough to pick up their phone and call the police and have this rapport, and they were talking to the cops on the phone, and I'm like, what are you guys doing? Oh, we're calling the police, there's a truck on fire out there. You know, that's community policing, when you can get to the youths. I don't think the OPP is gonna have that time for the community. You know, they're busy, they have a lot of stuff, the drugs and the other stuff going on, and I mean, that take up a lot of policing. So little basic things, they're not gonna be able to come to our needs.
Is there another question, just because we are...
No, that's it, I'm going home now, I'm going home. I'll get it. I'm out.
Thank you. Thank you.
Randy Narayan, 223 Muriel Street, Shelburne. I've heard a lot of talk about the actual police officers being transitioned into the OPP, but I haven't heard anything about the sergeants. Now, from the initial meeting that we had, there was only 1 sergeant position. Now, what would happen if both sergeants apply? They're both successful through the application process. What then?
They would be hired.
Both?
We are incorporating, correct. Both sergeants would become...
Would they be transferred to another station, or would they be both in Shelburne?
They would be working out of a different detachment.
Okay. All right, thank you.
My name is Ed Cruson. I live at 520 Owen Sound Street in Shelburne, L9B2X3. My question, I'll start off with a bit of a preamble. When I was mayor here, there was something like 20,000 cars passed through Shelburne on an average day, and on the weekend it was in excess of 50,000 on a typical day. And I think the standard operating procedures for the police service required that there would be 18 hours of traffic speed control done each weekend. And so I was attending Lions Club 50th anniversary, I believe, once, and this was back when Wayne Squirrel was our police chief, and they said visitors from out of town came and said, you know, Shelburne has such a strong police presence that even the squirrels are giving out tickets. And that's something that we're used to in Shelburne is, you know, if I drive through Markdale or Flesherton, there's not a strong police presence in those OPP police municipalities. But in Shelburne, there is a strong police presence. You feel it in the streets. You know when you come into Shelburne that the squirrels might be giving out tickets. So you adjust your behavior accordingly. And so I wondered if the OPP, if they take over the policing Shelburne, if they're going to provide that 18 hours of dedicated traffic control service on each and every weekend that this town has required.
The short answer is yes. I mean, if there's concerns, and again, the key to all of this is if you have those specific concerns about whatever problems that you can approach, either through the Police Services Board or to the detachment commander, indicate what concerns are out there that you need addressed. And by all means, we certainly address those issues, which includes traffic safety.
And that's all, that 18 hours of service and the weekend has been incorporated into the contract you've proposed to council?
So again, the contract, should the municipality decide, it's a transitional contract, it's based on FTEs. So the FTEs provided would provide that service, if that makes sense. Like the contract doesn't build in, you get X, you get 20,000 hours of traffic enforcement. That's a part of our duties. It would be included within that contract, if that makes sense.
Okay, so you talked about dedicated hours, and so I wondered, is there an issue with absenteeism or turnover? Because if you have, you know, we've heard about the relationships that police officers need to build with the community, but if they're absent frequently or turned around, they're transferred from this detachment to Wasaga Beach, or they're pulled down to another detachment. What are the rates of absenteeism and turnover that this Dufferin detachment currently enjoys?
Dufferin detachment is currently staffed at full complement. We have officers that have transferred out, yes, and their positions have been filled within a couple of weeks to a couple of months. We don't have an absenteeism problem. So I guess what I'm trying to figure out what you wanted to ask there.
So if an officer is not able to attend out of the dedicated equivalents, are we going to be down an officer, or is that position going to be filled by someone else from another squad?
Are you talking about an officer who's off sick for a day, or are you talking about an officer who transfers away in his position?
I'm talking about an officer who's off sick for a day but was supposed to be policing Shelburne.
So if an officer calls in sick, then it wouldn't automatically be replaced for the day. It would depend on what the staffing level of the day was and what the demands of the day were. There are occasions when the officers have other responsibilities, and if someone calls in sick, then we would backfill, or we would pull someone from another area to work.
Okay. So there will always be the same number of officers dedicated to policing Shelburne?
Yes.
Each and every hour?
Yes.
Okay. Good. Thank you.
I got one last question and then maybe two comments. Obviously, you know we have some civilians that work in the police department for the Shelburne Police. What happens to their jobs if we do the transition?
I think the transition contract includes for one detachment administrative clerk, one civilian position. Just gonna let
If I'm correct, you have approximately 7 civilian employees now, or members, I should say. 2 employees, one that's an administrator and one that does civilian data entry. The proposed contract will incorporate a civilian administrator, so there's an option for the 2 people that are currently working to apply for that position. The other 5 positions that I understand Shelburne Police Service has are auxiliary officers, and the OPP does have an auxiliary program. It's a provincial program, and they would also be able to apply to be auxiliary officers in the Shelburne area with the OPP.
Okay. So it is an applying process again, same as the officers?
Yes, it's an applying and training process for the
over the course of the campaign. And you know, at that point, it was difficult to comment on certain things, as it still is now, because we're still in that information gathering process. But I agree. You know, every effort that can be made to seek public input is what we're looking at. And then again, you know, the fact that the room's 3/4 of the way full, you know, I think that you know, sends a certain message.
It's me again. Now, let's get to the nuts and bolts of this. The OPP can do it for, let's say, $300-400. We're paying $700-800 for it. There is a difference, and I understand that difference would be used within the town on certain things that were on the survey that was sent out online to everybody, and some of them, to be quite honest with you, I don't think were too important. You could have been just left alone. So there's a saving of $300 or $400, and just as my understanding, is it $300 or $400? Whatever it is, there's a saving. Doesn't matter. There's a saving. Now, from my understanding, what I think that was going to be used for was for the build of the new police station, or something for a new police station and other bits and pieces in the town. Now, why have you considered renting that place that used to be the old police station up at Fines there? Some people have said it's not adequate, it's not a good enough building. But if you're going to spend $4 million or $5 million on building another one, surely that could be rented and made up to scratch. There's other places as well. There's the new industrial area around the town. Something could be constructed around there. I'm sure that wouldn't cost $4 or $5 million to do so. So we're not going to save anything. The public, nobody in this room is going to save a penny if we take on OPP. It is said that we're going to have the same services, which I'm sure, I believe the OPP, yes, but I prefer Shelburne police services. So to us, the public, there's no actual saving whatsoever. None. So why should we go with the OPP, with all due respect? And I mean that sincerely. So why should we do that? Why shouldn't we just stay the same and have what we've got? We've got the people, the police officers in this town are experienced, they know us. In my hometown, in England, the police officers were so well known we all called them Uncle. Because they were respected by the community, and that's what we've got here. And that, to me, is worth the difference between $500 and $700 or $800 per year. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Council. And OPP officers.
So I think there was a question in there, and again, just to be clear, there are two different considerations when we're looking only at the financial side of things. So setting aside service delivery for a moment. When we're looking at the financial side of things, there are the year-to-year operation costs. As I mentioned before, we don't know what those costs would be with the OPP in year 4. That's what we've tasked the consultant to project for us. The second set of information in terms of the strictly financial point of view are the capital costs. So, as I've said, the current police facility is no longer functional. So something would have to be done. Some dollars, whatever that happens to be, depending upon the option chosen, would have to be spent in terms of a capital investment to either build a new building, upgrade this one, or do something else. So, just to drill down so everybody's clear, there are two very different, sets of analysis that have to be done when it comes to the financial equation. Year-to-year operation and upfront capital. If we retain our Shelburne police force, everybody knows there's going to have to be some investment made to provide a new or upgraded or enlarged facility. Tool that council will have at our disposal when we're going through the decision-making process. Does that make sense?
Well, it does in a way, Mr. Mayor and Council, but like you've already said, and I'll reiterate it, a lot of those things that were put on the poll there, I'm sure a lot of people sitting here tonight don't find those important.
Well, we'll find out. That's why we asked the question.
I'm sure it will be found out. Thank you.
Thank you. Mark.
Hi, Mark McCarthy. I'm a business owner in town. I own a couple of properties in town, and I work with a lot of people who buy and sell properties in town. And a lot of people that I work with come to Shelburne because it's a safe community. That's the first thing that they talk about. And the main thing that our town is safe is because of our police services. As a business owner, I work late by myself quite often in the evening, and don't take that as a cue to come in late. And it's very comforting because I know the guys are driving around, or quite often they're sitting at the corner watching the traffic. So it's quite comforting for me to know that that's happening. So I'm not trying to create and what I'm seeing here tonight is us against them, and the them up there is the OPP that we're all proud of, and we're glad that you're there because we all drive through Ontario and many other places. So I thank you for being here. You were invited here, so I don't want anything to disrespect the OPP from this proceeding, because I think everyone here does respect the OPP. So. That needed to be said. And I'm sitting here in this building that's over 100 and some years old, and I can't help but think my ancestors who were sitting here voting many years ago to put a large amount of money into building a building like this. And here we are at the cusp that we need to put another huge amount of money, which is not that amount of money, a huge amount of money in the grand scheme of things. $4 to $7 million is not a huge amount of money if you put it over another 100 years. So I think we need to really sit back and look at that. The capital cost of putting a building up that's going to last many, many, many years. It's going to tighten the belt a wee bit now, but what happened to our ancestors who did that to build this building we're sitting in right now? So my question is, the survey that went out, I found it a little bit disturbing because it was publicized as a police survey, and it talked mostly about, well, you know, it's going to cost us this much money, but would you rather have this stuff? And I wanted to answer no to everything, and it wouldn't let me answer no. I had to answer something to submit it. So my comment section was limited to very little, so that you couldn't really hear my true feelings of what was going on in that survey. So I'm asking the council if you really want to know what we want, or are you directing us towards what you think we want?
I'm not sure I completely understand, because the list of priorities that are listed on that one particular question, respondents are asked to sort of weight them in terms of priority from, I think there's a 5-point scale from very little importance to extremely essential, or something of that nature. So I mean, if it was your opinion that none of those priorities were important,
no.
I think you could have...
I think you're misunderstanding, Mr. Mayor. I think that all...
Well, you said you didn't have an option to say that.
Well, I wanted an option to say that I want to speak only about police services. That survey talked about splash pads, updating the signs that are coming in. They're all important. I appreciate all of them, and I would like to vote aye. Very important to all of them. But when it comes to police services, I wanted some real questions about police services on that survey.
Okay. So...
It was not a budget survey. It was a police services survey, and I think we should have had some questions in, like, a little bit more detailed about what's actually happening with our police services and how we feel about them, and let us actually put a paragraph in there, not a sentence.
Yeah. So a couple of points that you've raised. I mean, there were questions about what sorts of services that the respondents value in terms of police services, and there were a list of 10 or 12 different characteristics that could be related to policing. In terms of the general nature of the survey, and I get what you're saying, you would have wished that it was limited only to policing. Unfortunately, council doesn't have the luxury of looking at policing in isolation. We have a budget that encompasses every service, every capital project, every program that's run throughout the town. We're also under certain restraints. We're legislated by the province to adopt a balanced budget each and every year. We cannot run deficits like the province or the federal government, for good reason. But what that means is we have a very limited number of resources in each year, and we also have a limited capacity in terms of our ability to borrow. So not unlike a credit card. And if you can find a loan that'll amortize for 100 years, please let me know where it is.
But people remortgage all the time. It could be
absolutely, and that's what we factored in. That was the question that was asked. If we were to borrow $4 to $7 million and amortize that over 20 years, what additional amount would each respondent be willing to pay on their tax bill on an annual basis for the next 20 years to service that debt?
That's a pretty high level question to ask people.
I don't think so. I have to disagree on that. I think it's fundamental to what this council is grappling with right now.
Okay, so when we come to the numbers, and you've got this professional who's doing the numbers, are they taking into account that our town is growing by 593 new homes in the next 2 to 4 years?
Absolutely. We have given this consultant every piece of information that he's asked for, and will continue to do so until his report's done. He's met with all of the senior staff. He's met with senior officials on the police service side. So essentially what he's trying to do is capture that data that will allow him to make those projections for years, as I said, 4, 5, 6 after that first 3-year transitional contract.
So when I go back to the survey then, to get the people's view, it's not, do we want a splash pad or the Shelburne Police? Do we want a new sign at the front of the town, or do we want the Shelburne Police? I found it really difficult to get the meaning behind that, because it's either police or some prettying up of our town.
But those are very real struggles that the council has to deal with. As I said, we have an infinite, we don't have an infinite resource when it comes to tax dollars or debt capacity. So within those constraints, within the fixed dollar amounts that we have to spend or borrow at a given period of time, we have to allocate that amongst an ever-expanding list of priorities. Okay. So the purpose of that particular question was to gauge the community and get a sense of, what are your real priorities in terms of a weighted ranking, and where amongst those priorities do police accommodations fit?
Okay,
so if we're going to make an investment, we need to know where the community is on that.
Okay, so let's go back to when you were looking at the budget of what it might cost to build a new building, and then the very next week or next council meeting was put in a motion to limit your spending on a 40% when you've already had the week before saying it would be 42% to finance 40% debt ratio, or to your debt borrowing. I forget the wording that you used, but it seemed funny that it was in when we're reading the budget, you had 42% of your borrowing capacity if you did build your building, but you put in a motion that you would only be able to, the council would only be able to borrow up to 40%.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, so this is getting quite technical, but bear with me. The province sets a debt capacity limit for each municipality. So they look at our financial data, and they set sort of the limit on our town's credit card. Those are fairly high limits, to be honest with you, and it's standard practice amongst municipalities across the province to adopt policies internally that actually lowers that provincial limit. So, for instance, at home, you may have a credit card with a credit limit of $50,000. Does that mean that you should go out, in terms of being a responsible, manager of your own finances? Does that mean you should go out and use that entire $50,000 limit? Or should you build some internal controls and have some internal self-restraint to say, I'm only going to spend what I can afford on this credit card so that I can pay it off at the end of every month? So that's what we were referring to there. The County of Dufferin has done this. Most other municipalities across the province have, as I said, implemented their own internal debt limits, which are lower than the provincial maximum that's allowed.
And I appreciate that, and I understand that it has to be there, but it just seemed really ironic that it was you have a presentation that you're going to be at a 42%, and the very next time you vote in, well, we're only going to go to 40. So it's almost like you've already made your decision that you're not going to build a new building.
No, the actual policy was discussed last term, and that whole discussion took place as part of the same presentation from the treasurer. And she outlined in much better detail and probably much more eloquently than I just did But, she tried to explain that this is our provincial maximum, this is the limit on our provincial credit card, this is what we're suggesting we adopt as a reasonable limit that's within our financial means. And then keep in mind, once we have that internal control set aside, there are certain things in terms of capital projects that we know are on the horizon that are not discretionary when it comes to water and wastewater projects. We don't have the luxury of saying, well, we just won't worry about that. That's not a high priority item. We have to maintain our water and wastewater. So there are certain, non-discretionary expenditures that we have to factor in.
Okay, so just to end up there, I think we're all feeling a little vulnerable because our safety seems to be at risk. And I just hope that the new council, with the courage that they had to step up to be on council, they have the courage to actually make some decisions that are for the better of the town. I hope that they can make those decisions.
Thank you. So just before we get to the next question, we are actually approaching almost the 2-hour point. I mean, I'm prepared to keep going as long as we have questions here, as long as the panel is, but I'm not sure. Is that okay? Okay.
Good evening. My name is Rick Demille. I live at 432 Old Village Lane. If my wife was here, she could tell you the postal code. I don't know what it is. Just to echo a little bit what Marg was saying there, I want to thank the OPP for coming tonight. I hope you don't feel like you've been attacked too much. Personally, the question that I have for you is, I know that when I moved back to Southern Ontario, I lived in the Alliston area. It was 1991 or so that they transitioned to OPP. I wasn't too involved in it at that point. I was new to the area. I know that there was a lot of upheaval about it, same as this, but I'm curious how closely the cost came in versus your estimate that you may have given other municipalities. There must be a history there where you estimated that it would cost this amount of money per year or per household or however it's calculated, and then what it turned out to be the reality in the end. There must be a history there.
Who haven't worked in Shelburne, show them the road, show them the town.
Well, and my hope is that they'd have a really big voice to advocate to go, no, I need to be sitting on 124 tonight. Or I need to be roaming this, my, subdivision. And that hopefully they'd have a big voice to go, that this town is used to this presence, and hopefully they'll be able to advocate for us too.
My question is more for the council and Wade. Right now, the police force that we have does a fine job. We all agree, we like them, we want them here. We're sure that the OPP, if they come in, they'll probably do the same kind of job. But the thing is, if we get OPP, it's because we're going to get our policing for a cheaper price, which is going to help us pay for well, we won't need the new building then, so we're going to save money on that. My question is, we knew that we were going to need a new police building a long time ago. This isn't something that just jumped out at us. And I'm on the board of directors at the building I live in at 250 Robert Street, and we have to budget all these things. And I can't believe that there wasn't something budgeted for that particular new building for our police department. Like usually there's something set aside each year to help with that. Is this not the case?
Yeah, thanks, Ross. And I mean, that's a good question. As I mentioned earlier, I think it might have been in response to Alex's question. Anyways, it doesn't matter. What sort of triggered this discussion was a report that was commissioned by the Police Services Board and delivered to the last council in, I believe it was October of 2015. That report really is what highlighted to the previous council that there's an accommodation issue here with the current facility. So we've had a little over 3 years dealing with this, and I mean we can put money away in reserves every year, but 3 years is not enough to save that kind of money. Before that, quite frankly, I can't comment on whether or not there were discussions or not. But what I know personally is that October of 2015, the council of the day was delivered that report. Councilor Donato has been here a lot longer than any of the rest of us up here, so he can probably speak to that with more authority.
There was no report before that October 2015. Council was not aware that any of the previous councils were not aware of an accommodation problem. That's when we were first made aware. Whether the Police Services Board knew about it, that may be different. We don't know. But that's the first time the council was actually made aware.
Okay, thank you. One thing I might say that we had a number of the councilors that were applying for their new positions come to our coffee meetings, and everybody that came that was on the council was for keeping the police department that we have, because that was a question to every one of them at that particular time. There must have been, well, some changes when you think financially, but I'm just saying at that time when they were being elected, they were all for keeping the town police that we have. Thank you.
Thanks, Ross.
Hi, me again, Amber Kinsley from 29 Davis Drive. So I have two things. First thing, the survey again about the survey. I work in long-term care, I'm a nurse. One thing we do have to train every year on customer service. Another thing, because we're dealing with obviously people every day. Have you guys thought, we have 2 long-term care facilities in Shelburne. What are you guys doing to reach them? Well, because they most of them don't have access to computers and surveys to do, and they make up the majority of this town, actually.
But that's a good point, and thanks for raising that. One of the things that we have talked about with senior staff is potentially doing something similar to what was done during the election process this year. So as many of you know, at least those who live and vote in Shelburne, we adopted an entirely online voting system for the 2018 election. What we did to reach those members of our community who may not have, readable access to the internet was we made tablets available both at Town Hall, and then we also made those available, I think, on a sort of on a roaming basis at the 2 long-term care facilities. So it's a good point, and I think we can probably do something to reach out to the administrators at both of those facilities to set aside a day where one of those things can be made available. I maybe wouldn't suggest that we use staff time to do that, but maybe amongst the 7 of us as councillors, we could take turns to man one of those stations, and then the residents could use a town-owned tablet.
Yeah, the Malloyd Center, they aren't long-term care facilities, but they
Sure.
Can't come here. They can't walk here.
Yeah.
They don't have access or funds.
And that's what I'm
They don't have funds
saying.
for that.
We would go to them with that tablet, so that's something we can look at, but it's a good point.
Another thing that might make this algorithm happen to make you feel warm and fuzzy is why don't you have a spot where I can pick up one of those keep police signs, and then you could see all the community around here have them on their lawn.
I think those are available to anybody who
I
would
see
want
a couple of them, but I'm like, where do I even get the signs? Because I think if we could see
I think there's a
everybody.
woman right at the back there that can help you out with that, if that's what you like. See her on the way out. I mean, obviously, in terms of corporate policy, the town is not going to be distributing those. I mean, we're neutral in this at this point until we have all of the facts and we actually
Right,
make a decision.
you're looking for the town, what the town wants.
But
And if
there's
the town
better ways
puts that
of
on
doing
their
that
sign-
than handing out advertising one way or
Well, if
another.
you're asking me if I want a splash pad rather than police, that's like asking my 2-year-old if he wants a sucker or if he wants to sit down and do his
Sure, but we're
drawing.
not offering building splash pad signs.
I didn't agree with the survey.
Dave.
David Hawthorne, 929 Greenwood Crescent, L9 Victor, 3 Bravo 9. I've been listening to a lot of talk here tonight about the police accommodations was the initial start of this whole process. Given the fact that we're really satisfied with the Shelburne Police in Shelburne, the OPP in surrounding communities, and both forces are interested in community safety, and policing of that community safety. The OPP have built a new office out at Primrose not many years ago. They're in here trying to get the business, so obviously they have enough accommodation in that police station to take care of anything that would happen here. Could we not have some arrangement between the Shelburne OPP, maybe operating a substation here, but anytime they needed the lockup facilities, it could be done out at Primrose? And that would certainly be a lot less costly than building a new $5 to $7 million building here. And it would accommodate the same thing, it would make everybody happy. The Shelburne people would be happy, the OPP should be happy because their building is being used more. Seems like a no-brainer to me.
Just so I'm clear, so would there be an opportunity for a facility sharing arrangement whereby the municipality would maintain our own, local Shelburne police force, but we would use, the cell block facilities at the OPP detachment in Primrose?
That's what I think would be a great solution.
Does anybody want to take a stab at that? Is that possible?
That would not be possible.
That would not be possible? Why not?
In terms of an emergency situation, of course, but to set up an arrangement to have the Shelburne Police utilize the OPP detachment in Primrose, that would not be possible.
Well, that's why it would cost a lot. If we could cooperate, things would be possible and a lot cheaper. If we both set up wall blocks, roadblocks, it won't work, obviously. But I think it's a possible solution. Could be worked on.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, do I have to go to a microphone?
Your voice probably carries next. So.
Yeah, I'll carry anyway, I'll speak loud then.
Just remember questions.
Yeah, that's right, just questions, no problem. One of the questions will be through you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, I would like to say good evening to the panel, to the members of council, yourself, Mr. Mayor, and the fine people here in the gallery, over Shelburne and elsewhere. So I think that I've done my duty here. But the question I have...
Sorry, just name and address, sir.
Okay, name it's Nick Garisto, 20 Paula Court, Orangeville Crescent, L9W 5V1.
Thank you.
Okay, so the question you told me, I gotta get right to the question. First question, and I hear many here, there was good questions. The first question I have is through you to the panel. Is there a user pay system that the OPP charges over and above the actual contract for every calls that comes into the station? And what those charges are?
Sorry, what type of system? I'm sorry, sir.
In other words, if a call comes into the station, you guys give a 3-year contract, that's my understanding. But do you guys also charge a user pay system for every call that comes into the station for whatever service? And
We do not have a user pay system in the transition contract.
So you already have that?
No, we do not have a user pay system. You're not charged for the calls in the transition contract.
Okay, thank you. And the next question is, now, when I call, there is a different charge for every different calls? Like, for example, $6, $10, $16? It's a variety. The reason I'm asking this question, because it could be 5+ calls coming into the station, could be 10,000, could be 15, could be 50. We don't have a crystal ball how many calls will be there. That is the reason, and that will be a major cost for a municipality to be added on. So that was, but you answered my question. It is a charge. Now the other question...
Sorry, Nick, I guess that's part of the rationale why you base the call for service portion of the billing out over a 4-year average, so that if there was, one year that had a spike or a large dip, it's averaged out over 4 years, so hopefully you're capturing an accurate picture of calls.
In the billing model, that is how the calls for service are distributed, but there is not a fee per call. It's a percentage.
To make you feel, a part of a highly functioning community are not something that can be reduced to numbers. So that's something that I think, we have to get a sense of, and I mean, that's a responsibility on us, but it's also a responsibility on the community to share those feelings with us. So, there is no answer to that, I don't think. It's just.
But they're here tonight?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and I mean, again, as I've said a couple of times, that's why we're doing things like this, so that we can, try to identify those untangible things that can't be quantified.
Okay, thank you so much.
Hi.
Oh, yeah.
My name is Charity Hunter, and I live at 725 Albert Drive in Shelburne, L9V2S5. I'm a kindergarten teacher here in the community, and I swear I did not wear my shirt on purpose for the evening. However, I'm not sure exactly where I'm coming from this about, other than my relationship with, obviously, the OPP has always been, you can't take it what you can't catch. However, I know I can guarantee that the police are sitting at the market on 124, and my foot stays really well at 60. So, but as a teacher, anytime that I've contacted our local police, which we involve them a lot into our class, has never been a hesitation or we'll see it's like, yeah, sure, let me see who's on board that day. They write it down. Never has been a forgotten moment. I mean, if I've always been told, cows escape from this pasture and you have to go do that. I get it. I'm okay with that, but it's always been a yes. There's never been a doubt. I've had them on the ice this year. They've crossed us to, across Owen Sound Street. Always been a yes. And I guess my comment to the woman who talked about is there specific training and courses and stuff for the OPP. I get it. I come also from a corporate background, and there's only, you can't really teach bedside manner. It kind of comes, it's a natural thing that's sort of innate. But for me, my sense of community with the police officers here is that's built by being in the community. That comes with time. That comes with knowing when I run, I see them circling. That's the presence that I'm hoping is still there. I came open-minded going, okay, I'm not going to come all defensive with walls up. I needed to leave tonight knowing the presence is the same, that you're still sitting there, that I still see you guys roaming my street. And you hear the comments like, man, do these Shelburne police have anything better to do? What a great problem. Like, absolutely, roam my streets. Go ahead, sit outside of my house. I want that same feeling. I've had officers knock on my door at 10 o'clock saying, hey, we noticed you have cameras. There's been some complaints in the area. Can we have your footage? Yes, you can. Show me where. Like, absolutely. That's what I wanted to leave with tonight. Can I call you? It's the sense I'm getting is we have to ask if we need something. So do I have to ask you who's going to run the polar plunge? Because hey, I jumped twice. Like, what's that sense of connecting to us? And I get there's a woman or there's this person that is assigned to that, but I don't know, OPP, I don't have to ask for that ticket, but I know I'm going to get it. That's where I'm kind of coming with this. Is it always a sense of having to ask, or will the presence be there and that's being built, and then I can build that trust with you guys as we have with these officers? I wanted to leave tonight going, you know what, we're going to still see these faces. They're still there. They just have a different title. But I'm not quite feeling that same sense.
So, as I've tried to explain in the past, and I'll try to explain it again, you don't have to ask for the service. But what I would say to you is, it's going to be the same faces. It's going to be a different shoulder flash if that's the decision that's made. Mm-hmm. These officers will be invited to apply to the OPP. You've heard what the rates of hire onto the OPP are from other agencies. Mm-hmm. And I don't expect that if any of these officers got hired that they would want to transfer somewhere else. I think they all live here, and I think they would want to stay here. So you keep that local knowledge, and that would be the intention for me as any detachment commander, is to keep those officers where they know the community.
I know you won't have data and everything right now, and I don't expect a hard answer.
whenever our statements are prepared for our municipalities on an annual basis, they're prepared in the early fall. They're delivered to the municipalities by October 1st. And then once the following year is completed, they're reconciled. And I believe that on average, the actual amounts fall very close. I'm going to say under 5%. If my financial analyst was here, I could probably give you a more accurate figure, perhaps 2 to 3%. But our estimates that we prepare at the beginning of each year for each municipality does fall in the 5% range or less when they're reconciled at the end of the year.
Yeah, generally in the business world, plus or minus 5% is considered good, right? I just want to say to our council, I commend you guys for going down this road. No matter what, when you get at the end of it, the decision you make is going to be unpopular with some people. But it needs to be made. I personally think that if we spend $7 million or whatever the amount is to build a police station and we can't pay for it in 20 years, it'll probably be out of date in 10. You know, like that seems kind of pointless to me, and that's just my opinion. Have a good night.
Good evening. I'm Daniel Rock. I live in 529 Bread Street. I'm fairly new to the town of Shelburne. Earlier tonight, I think about 5 questions ago, civilian members was discussed, and one point that was brought up was the auxiliaries. Dufferin OPP, from what I'm aware of, doesn't have any auxiliary program. Will that be something that will be implemented?
I'm really glad that you asked that, because I'm very excited to tell you that we did just get approval to have our own auxiliary unit. We're going to start advertising for our applicants in the next month and hold a competition, and we hope to have the auxiliary unit up and running within 2 to 3 months, or have our applicants in the next training session. So yes, there will be.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening. Thank you so much for the massive amounts of information we've been given tonight. My name is AJ. I have a business in town as well as a home. 136 Birch Grove. My husband will give you the postal code. A couple things I just want to note with reference, Mayor Mills, you said that there was no monies left for or open in the debt ratio that we have for paying for things that were coming up like water and sewage. But we are mandated by the province of Ontario that water pays for water, sewage pays for sewage, that's why they're individually billed. And any increases or changes that you want to make to that need to come from development charges. Would that not be correct?
Yeah, I didn't say there wasn't enough money to cover that. What I said was when we're looking at our debt capacity, we have to factor in those non-discretionary expenses that we know are on the horizon.
But why? They wouldn't affect the debt ratio.
Yes, in theory, water pays for water and sewer pays for sewer, but that's not always the case. You know, there is a balancing there in terms of our water and sewer rates. If we were to pay for, you know, all of the water and sewer projects that are going to be necessary over the course of the next several years, I don't think anybody in this room would be happy with the rates that they would be seeing for the water and sewer bill. So yes, it pays for it in part, but that doesn't alleviate the necessity for us to borrow the difference or raise it from the tax base through tax increases.
Okay, thank you. So I have a dog's breakfast of questions that stem from some of the other comments, so forgive me. Thank you, I apologize. These only work so well. You stated earlier that you could not give response times. Now, I understand that response times for, say, townships are going to be different than within towns themselves proper, because you have officers perhaps. This is what I don't understand. This is, I guess, are we hiring Dufferin OPP, or are we hiring officers that are going to be in the town of Shelburne? This is my problem is that your response time to a call in Mulmer, understandably, is going to be a lot longer. Now, you couldn't give me a response time, and the detail-oriented person in me will tell you that that is HUI. Ambulance response times, which are the same as any other emergency service, are based on the time the call comes in to the time that the emergency service arrives. Not where you are, not based whether you're driving around in a car or if you're a detachment or anything like that. It's based on the time for the call to come in versus when you arrive. So, I understand that that would be a hard number to pull up for a town. And you would be able to give me different response times, but you don't seem to have those either. I worry that some of the information that's been brought to tonight's meeting is there's big holes. And it's not an attack on the OPP officers. As previously stated, wonderful human beings, great at their job. Just as our wonderful human beings over here are fabulous at their job. My concern is that we get diluted with responding to calls in Mulmer or Mono and in nowhere, because our officer, even though we have more officers, it's now easier to send them farther afield. Can you help me with that?
Yes, I'll try. So, the municipality enters into a contract to have 15 officers as we've established. Those officers come in. They are distributed and they work out of the Dufferin County detachment, and they're assigned to specific zones within Dufferin County. For Shelburne, right now, the plan is to have 3 officers in the Shelburne zone. So, yeah, I mean, the assumption could be then that response times would be quicker because it's a relatively small geographic
Can I ask?
area. That's common sense.
While you're talking?
Yeah.
Chief Moore, do we always have 3 officers on during the day? I want to compare apples to apples.
Monday to Friday, it could be as low as 2 minimum, could be up to 5.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, I apologize.
Okay, so can you just ask the question again? I want to.
Okay, so you have your 3 officers roaming around in Shelburne, and you get a call out in Mulmer, and it's not a small place.
Right.
And you get another call out in Mona, and it's not small either. So now we have our officers being pulled, something major happens, because all your other officers, I mean, services in kind, I understand that sometimes happens here, but generally it doesn't.
Right, and we do have, I mean, over above the 3 that would be assigned, for example, to the Shelburne zone, we have other officers that cover the other areas in Dufferin County, and they would address it. Now, there could be a possibility that there might be a major occurrence where that would draw resources to deal with the call initially, and then they would fall back to their zone. So that could potentially happen, correct? But as I say, if I'm understanding the question, we're not always going to be drawing people out of a specific area. For example, Shelburne, we're not going to be sending them all the way down to Mulmer every single time there's a call out down there, because we do have other officers working out of the Dufferin detachment that will address those calls in those zones.
And I understand that, but having come from an emergency services background, when calls come in, they're prioritized.
Correct. So
a lovely lady asked earlier, if you've got an accident versus, a stranger in a backyard or whatever. So you, all right, you have all these calls come in on a call screen when you're 911. They're prioritized. What happens if nothing is on Shelburne, is coming in for Shelburne, but there's all kinds of calls everywhere else, even if they're low priority calls? You gonna pull the Shelburne officers?
So how the calls for service work and how the officers operate day to day is based on the assignments of their supervisors. And their supervisors are to manage how they respond to calls for service. We have calls that are prioritized from 0 to 7 when they come in. So it's up to the supervisor on the platoon to manage his officers. And if there's a bunch of calls in the call queue, nothing for Shelburne itself, it doesn't mean that the officers from Shelburne are going to get pulled out into the zone to answer those calls. They're prioritized. They can wait. There's calls that are nuisance calls, noise complaints, neighbor complaints, right? And so if a priority 0 call comes in, it's an all hands on deck call. right? It's managed from the supervisor's perspective. He analyzes the call, determines how many resources he needs for how long, and then he deploys those resources as required. If they do get pulled out of Shelburne, then they get sent back to Shelburne as soon as they're not required anymore. Is that helpful?
Very, thank you. So, I have one more thing. And I wrote it earlier, so I apologize. Okay. So I don't know who your consultant is, and I just wondered, when you're pulling all this information together, and it is massive amounts of information, and hard, again, to compare the apples to apples, one of the things that I was wondering, when a consultant does this large comparison, how do they build some kind of algorithm, or what kind of value do they give to, I want to call it emotional value, or the value of having our own police service, the rapport that's been built, that's constantly being built every day, that already exists, and to add to that, some of the interactive community events that our officers all belong to. I know there's one very recent in most of our memories that was absolutely phenomenally amazing, and thanks to a couple of the officers on the Shelburne Police Board, or Police Service rather, were extremely successful. So I just wonder how they build that into the grand scheme of things, because it is something that should be considered when you're looking for what the right answer would be.
I mean, quite frankly, I don't know specifically if there's an algorithm that can quantify, you know, that warm, fuzzy feeling. I suspect there's not, and I mean that's one of the issues, you know, which is often the case. I think it probably doesn't matter what sort of data you're analyzing. You know, there are certain factors that cannot be, you know, put into an equation and have an answer spit out. So that's why I think, you know, functions like this and you know, one-on-one personal engagement in the community is so critical to council's decision making, because those, you know, sort of things that tug at your heartstrings or make you feel good.
Compared, it's the percentage of municipal use that your municipality used compared with the rest of the municipalities in the province.
But maybe through you, Mr. Mayor, it's a separate charge for different types.
It's a hierarchy of charges.
You know, let's say an officer requires a longer period of time to investigate, and some of them require very little time. There is a higher charge for the one that requires a longer period of time.
In our billing model, the calls for service are separated into 9 different categories. The 4-year average in each of the category is used, and it's a weighted time standard, so that more serious calls would have a higher weighted time standard than a less serious call, and there are 9 different categories.
But in other words, you do charge a user fee call.
In the billing model,
Yes.
calls for service are billed for as a percentage of the number of calls in your municipality compared to the number of calls in all of the provincial municipalities we police.
Okay, the next question, Mr. Mayor, I have.
And this will be the last.
Yeah, okay. Why 3 years and not 10 years contract? And the reason I ask this, because if you give a 10 years contract to a municipality, at least they have a chance to make up the difference in savings, if there is any savings, which I question that. So why you guys don't go over and above the 3 years contract, for example, 10 years?
At the end of the transition contract, when a municipality switches to the billing model, they have a choice of a 3, 4, 5, or 6-year contract. It's the municipality's choice, and depending on how the Police Services Act unfolds with the changes that are under the Ford government, we'll have to wait and see if there'll be any change to that. But currently, municipalities have an opportunity for a 3 to 6 year contract under the billing model.
Anyway, Mr. Mayor, I don't think, I guess the questions answered, but not to the specification that I was hoping to hear.
I apologize for that.
Okay, you know, because there is a charge for user pay calls, the 10 years that I asked for, I find that they only give you 3 years, and that's an estimate, because they want to get the figures, what it cost us done before they will be, you know, a higher cost. So there is 3 things, and I'll finish. There's 3 things.
You will be shortly.
Okay. 3 things I believe strongly in this country. One is healthcare. Because the healthcare, that means it's my life. Okay, everybody's alive the same. 2 is law enforcement. Because law enforcement, they're there for our protection, to save our lives. Most instances. And the other one, it's education. All 3 will go together.
I don't disagree.
So I'll leave you with that, and my point is, I don't mind to pay higher taxes for those people. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick. So it looks like that's it, and we are just shy of 9 o'clock, so I mean, we have, I think, exhausted probably everybody, and council still has a bit more business to do, and then have families to get home to at the end of the night. But by my count, we had a total of at least 30 different instances of somebody coming up to the microphone and speak. There were some that had multiple questions. So, you know, in excess of 35, probably 40 questions were asked and hopefully answered to the question of satisfaction tonight. On a personal note, I would like to thank each and every member of the community that came out, and in particular those who got up to the microphone to ask a question. Everybody, I think, without exception, demonstrated one of the key things that's so special about this community, that, you know, we are able to have these difficult decisions without getting nasty, without, you know, slinging mud and getting into personal attacks. We're able to maintain, you know, a good sense of decorum. And I, for one, as mayor of this town, am extremely proud of the way that everybody conducted themselves here tonight. So I thank you for that. And with that, I think we're going to take probably about a 10-minute recess, let council have a chance to use the washroom, get a drink, and then we'll reconvene in the council chambers. Thank you very much.